Hello, you're here today on Tea with Molly, and we have Todd Kruder. He is a retired Navy captain. He is also the co-founder of Lucius Seneca Wellness Group. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you, Molly. Appreciate it. This is a great opportunity, and thank you so much for having me
You're
here.
welcome. I will say that I'm relieved that I can say the whole name of that organization.
It can be a mouthful, yes. It does not roll off the tongue all the time.
What inspired the name? Let's start there, and then we can definitely go into an in-depth conversation about today's topic.
Interesting story, and I'll have to give you a little bit of background. About 6 years ago, when I was an active duty Navy officer, I had come back from Iraq, and I ended up being diagnosed with severe depression. And over a time, I became the illness took hold even more and more with me. And there's a period of time there where I was so deep into my depression, separating myself from family and others. I started going on the internet. I was starting to just searched various topics. I was losing faith in my previous, what I had been grown up as, to believe in. So I was searching all sorts of topics. And I came across a quote that just stuck with me. And I'm going to paraphrase it because I'm going to not remember it word for word. So I'll paraphrase, allow me to paraphrase. But it talked to the quickest way to freedom, or highway to freedom, is through the vein. And that quote was attributed to Lucius Seneca, and Lucius Seneca the Younger, who was the second in a family of philosophers back in the day, actually under Nero, was attributed to saying that. Again, the quickest way to freedom is through the vein. And again, I paraphrased that, but for me that just sunk in, and I was at a deep and dark time in my depression and in my illness, that I started thinking to myself, wow, well, maybe there's more, maybe there's something to that in a very dark way. I started thinking of it in a very dark way. And over time, thankfully, I got out of that darkness, but I never forgot about that quote. And there's an interesting fact about Lucius Seneca where he was actually ordered to commit suicide at the hand of Nero. So he was involved in a conspiracy, and at that time it was deemed an appropriate method, and he was actually told to commit suicide. And so between the committing of suicide that's associated with his name, and even more so with that quote, that just stuck with me. And I can get into more detail about the organization in a minute, but that's how the name came about. Lucius Seneca Wellness Group. Lucius Seneca being the ancient philosopher back in the Nero days, and somehow this ancient philosopher came back and spoke to me, and that's where the name came from. So.
Now, you co-founded this organization with your wife.
Absolutely.
Now, what is that like? You come home and you're diagnosed with depression, and you have to consider your family. You have to consider your life. You have to consider your role in the world. How do you have that conversation with your family?
Wow. It's a delicate conversation to have. It leads me, that question leads me to kind of where I am today. And we could talk a little bit more about some of the books that I've written and why, but suffice it to say, I'm currently working on the fourth of a series of planned 4 books. And the important part about that is because that fourth book is going to take a perspective from my family, from my children. And I say children, and I use that term a bit loosely with you because they're 20. The youngest are 21 now, so by some imagination, they're not probably children anymore. But certainly during the past 6 years, they witnessed, they were participants in my depression, and having that conversation has been delicate. And I give you an example. I was starting to write and do the research on this fourth book that I mentioned, and I started with my younger twin boy, very open, very upfront, started to give me and disclose to me some of the things that he observed, and that was very important, and it went very well. And then I went on and I was having a conversation with my daughter, and I realized there was something amiss. There's something wrong, and I couldn't quite figure it out. And as a dad, you know, I'm sitting there going, boy, I should know what's wrong. I can't figure it out. And it was one of the days my wife pulled me aside, and she told me, she goes, she's not ready. And it sunk into me and hit me pretty much like a ton of bricks at the time, because I was foolishly thinking, oh, okay, I can gather this the information I need to fulfill this fourth book that I was so focused on doing, and I really lost track of, okay, how this really is affecting my own family, and having that conversation is delicate. So I've had to back off a little bit with my enthusiasm to get the fourth book done, but I don't doubt I'll have it done. It's just, but it is a delicate situation, a conversation to have at the dinner table. It's certainly, and I would have to tell you that it took me a long time to realize that it was me in my depression and my illness, and it had an effect on them. So it regrettably took a long time for me to come to that realization.
So what was the conversation like with your wife? Did she come up with the idea to start this organization? Did you bring it up? How did it all come to both partnering and agreeing, yes, this is what we should do together? It was
wonderful, and it was really interesting how it happened. And much like what we're doing here today, you know, everything good in my life happens over a conversation with coffee or tea or something like that. And we start our mornings off, like most probably people do, having coffee or so at the kitchen table. Going back a little bit though with you is, I had, at the time, or before I had this conversation with my wife, I had finished the first book, and Journey in the Fog of Depression, and I was looking for means and mechanisms, other entities that might want to take the book and use it for good, for helping others, to get the message out. And as I started looking at some of these other organizations, they all had, you know, they were all beneficial in some form or fashion, but at the same time, I just couldn't seem to let go of the fact that, hey, this is my story, my book, and it deserves, you know, my personal touch to it and distribution of it. And so I struggled with what to do with it, and we were having coffee one morning, much like what we're having conversation here now, and my lovely wife, I think we were married it's got to be 25 years or so at the time, maybe 24, and she comes up with a thought, and she goes, Todd, yes, dear, and she said, why don't you create your own nonprofit? And I looked at her, my face kind of in shock, and I've been through a lot of different experiences, so shocking me was kind of difficult, but I was shocked by the answer, and it didn't even dawn on me up until that moment of, yeah, we can do this. We, the collective, my wife and I, can do this together. And to me, how fascinating that was, the idea that we could own, if you will, the message, to get it out to others and personalize it that way. And I don't have to do it through another entity, but I could do it through our own self, if you will. And it was so meaningful and powerful to me. So it was all due to my wife and a cup of coffee and her saying, why don't we start a nonprofit? And that's what did it.
It's great to be in partnership with someone who really wants to support you at a deeper level, emotional, physical, spiritual. To find a life partner who will stick with you through thick and thin is quite rare these days, so that's a congratulations on my part.
I wish she could be here with us today and talking with you, because you would hear so much of another aspect to the illness of depression. And she actually, it's you know, people. I've written three books now, and the second one was written from her perspective, and I tell you, people have asked me, well, which one do you like more, the one about myself or the one about her? And it's so instinctive for me just to say hers. Her part of the story, her viewpoint of depression, to me was, even more powerful than just coming from my own perspective of the person who's actually has the illness and is dealing with day to day. So her perspective is fantastic, and it's great to have somebody like that. Yeah.
And I do now want to talk a little bit about the books.
Sure.
What I really appreciate and value about the book or the series of books is it's really about a journey.
Yes.
Right? It's all related back to a journey. Each
Absolutely.
of the volumes relates to a specific type of journey. The first one being yours, the second one being your wife's. What is the third one about? I know the fourth you said was from your family's perspective, particularly your children's perspective, but the third one that's just released, correct?
I will have to. I have to make a correction to my own thought, because boy, after you've written more than two books, they start to blend. And the first book was written from my perspective. It was my journey, and the second book was I like to call it a process book. It was about the method, how I came about reflecting back on my own life experiences, and how I used a method to help me understand what those meant and how they contributed to my depression. So that was more of it's a journey, but it was really a method of my journey. It kind of shows you the how I did the journey. The third book was my wife's, so I stand corrected on that. And again, if she were here, she would have corrected me, I'm sure. But the third book is her perspective, and the fourth book is a book that's going to be written again for my 5 children and their sense and their impression of the illness of depression, how it affected them. Together, it's a cumulative journey of not only myself, but the process, but also their perspective as well. So that's the intent.
How was it for you to write about your personal journey? Writing a biography or a memoir, and for me it was very difficult. I wrote a book that was at such a young age. You would think, why a memoir? But I want to bring this up because there are a lot of people who tell me they want to write their life story, or they want to become a writer, and they want to talk about real life things that will help people. But that is not just an idea that just happens overnight. There's a process that happens with writing, especially something so personal. There's a healing that happens throughout that process. There's an emotional reliving of experiences that has to also be there in order for the book and the stories to be authentic. What was your journey like, especially the first book? Because the first time you're putting it all down on paper, you have to admit the truth of where you are and where you've been. Yes.
Wow. Where do I begin? It's such a interesting, dynamic story. Let me say that maybe first and foremost, and it's written in the books, in the forewords, and probably in chapter 1s and all the other stuff, but it's in there, and I want to repeat it. I think it's important that the end state of the books, and the book, the first one, the second one, third one, and the fourth one to be, is first and foremost for me, my family, to help us in our journey. It was they're therapeutic in that sense. The second purpose behind it is to help others. If someone can pick up one of the books and say, I can relate, I understand where you're coming from, or I felt that way, or I have someone who feels this way, and how can I deal with that person? That's all that's needed. And I wanted to say that because I think it's so important, and it goes back to why did I begin to do this? And interesting story. I was going through therapy. I think it was for the third time, and that's a story in and of itself of why. Okay, it took me 3 times to figure out what my problem is, or that I have a problem, but it did. And it was during my third time going through therapy. I was going through some talk therapy, and I was on some medication therapy as well. And the therapist I was going to see offered a plethora of opportunities, I guess, if you will, for feeling better. And some of those were very traditional, which I would say is reading. There's a lot of books on the subject of depression, so I was offered several books to go read, and by some very distinguished authors. And then there was another therapy or therapeutic means, which was through yoga, which is, again, a very time-tested, very proven, if you will, again, avenue for helping people deal with depression. So again, reading of other books, yoga, those were two very well-known, understood kind of means and processes to go through. Well, little did she understand me at the time, and so she's offering these two things up, and I am of a nature where I probably read the most books when I was in high school, and that was about the last time I read a book from cover to cover, unfortunately. And I don't promote that as a means, but that's how I am. And I'm a person who, when I did read something, I read usually the first part, and I go back to the end of the book, and then I'm good to go. I got it all. Everything in between is I've got. So she didn't understand this. So she's talking to me, and she's offering me and pointing to these various volumes of books, and I'm sitting here going, well, what do I say to her? I'm not. That's not me. It's not going to help. So I kind of nicely took some paper from her. She wrote down some titles, and then of course she starts looking at me, and I think my face gave it away when she was starting to go more about the books. That, well, okay, let's look at another opportunity. And so she told me about yoga. And my comment to her, and I'll remember to this day, was, I'm sorry, I'm not a Gumby kind of person. I just can't. I just can't do that. I've seen yoga, and I can't picture myself in those positions. And so she looks at me in a very serious way, and she's like, well, we won't give up. There's going to be something. There's going to be something for help. Don't give up hope. So I left there that day, kind of feeling a little bit distressed, going, wow, I really need some help. I'm not a reader, and it seems like there's a lot of help in reading, and I'm not very flexible, so it's like, oh, yoga's not going to help me. So I'm driving home, and I'm trying to think, what can I do? I need something therapeutically to help me out here. And I remembered a day back in high school, I think it was senior year, and it was an English class, and we were doing writing, creative writing. Probably the one and only time I could ever remember a class that I actually enjoyed the subject matter and what I had to go do in the assignment. And I started thinking about it all my drive home. And I started thinking to myself, you know what? Why not start journaling? Just start writing some things down. And I did. And it was about 300 pages later that my wife said to me, she's looking at this material, and she goes, you have something here. You have a story. And have you thought about sharing that story with others? And again, I was kind of caught up in my own therapeutic world, and I was thinking, this is really helping me. And I thought so much about the help it was giving me. And I didn't think about the fact that, hey, maybe someone else can gain something from my story. And it was her, and a couple other things that came about as well. I call it a little bit of serendipitous activity that happened around this time. But it all came about that here I am with this about 300 pages of material, and my wife goes to me and says, hey, how about you write? Put this in a book. And I had to, it wasn't an easy choice. It wasn't an easy choice because there's a lot of deeply personal elements in the material. It's a very exposing to oneself, and that wasn't easy. But at the same time, it was very fulfilling to me to release that story, to say, hey, yeah, at the time I was a naval officer, 5 children, wonderful home, but I was suffering from an illness that was just taking me down, with it, and my entire family and everything that meant anything to me at the time. So I needed to share that story, and it was through encouragement, like as I said before, through my wife, that really made that turn for me to make that happen. But it's very difficult.
You did bring up a wonderful point, and I think it's about how we all find the best way to cope and the right type of therapy for us. We're
Absolutely.
all different. We're built differently. Going through some of tragedies and losses myself, some things just didn't work for me, and others did, and maybe not the traditional sense.
Right.
But to continue to ask the question, what will work for me? What will be natural for me to process this poison, which sometimes is just our emotions, our pain, and let it leave our system, let it leave our body. Yours happens to be, you discovered on that long ride home,
Yes.
or maybe it felt long, maybe it was a
Yeah,
short
no,
ride
it
home,
it felt long. Yes.
that it was creative writing. And my channel is the same, but somebody else may not find it through creative writing, and it could be through sports and exercise, some way for them to feel like they can process their emotion. So that was a beautiful point that you made, that one way of healing and processing is not right for everyone. Secondly, I would love to have you talk a little bit about the concept of depression and mental health, and personally what you had to grapple with inside of your mind when you were first diagnosed with it, and you had to actually hear someone tell you you're depressed. You are diagnosed now as a depressed person. How did you feel about that, and hearing that about yourself?
First of all, it's taken me 6 years to say the word depression without it tapering off in my voice. For the longest time, you would hear me say depression, and real slow, it would just taper off. And I had the longest time to saying it, so it's taken me a long time to get to this point. There were a lot of hurdles in the way. I wish I could say it was just waking up and saying, "Oh, I have depression," and we go back to the journey discussion, and it was such. I relate it back to well, actually, one of the analogies I use is treading water in the ocean or in some large body of water. It's something as a naval aviator we have had to do in training, and it can be physically exhausting at times. And my depression was very much like that, where I was treading water and I was physically and mentally exhausted at times, and to the very extreme. So I use that as an analogy, just to give you an understanding of the physical and mental wearing that the disease can and the illness can have on somebody. But it wasn't an easy discussion to have. It wasn't something that came about over a single night. It was over time, and I think back and the one event at the very beginning, where again my wife and I, a fantastic relationship for many years, 5 children, and one of the things that we based our relationship on was truth and honesty, and up to that point, that was really fundamental to what kept us and what was an element of our relationship. So it really came to me one day when we were having a fight. I will use the word fight, but for our fights were not talking to each other per se. So they were vocal fights. But it came to me one time when we were having one of these arguments, disagreements, and again, it was attributed to my depression at the time, looking back on it. And my wife revealed something to me. And what she revealed to me was she had told me she was going to a Weight Watchers meeting once a week. And she revealed to me one evening after one of our arguments that she wasn't in fact going to a Weight Watchers. She was going to actually see a therapist herself. She was going to see a therapist because of my depression, because of my illness, and it had affected her to that extent where she needed to get help. And at the time, I was having to go to Norfolk, Virginia, every week where I worked, and so I was home on the weekends. And I remembered that drive. It was I do that drive every Sunday, and I remember driving, feeling very awful. Just my depression really taken hold, and I had felt I had let her down. I had done something wrong, and I had ruined our relationship to what it was based on. Because here she is, she's basically told me this untruth, if you will. And I remember that evening I got to the bachelor's quarters, or the quarters where I was staying in on the base at Norfolk, Virginia, and I was on the 5th floor, and it was evening, and I remembered. At that moment, when I put my bag down before I went into my room, I looked and I held on to that guardrail that was there, and I looked down at that ground, and I honestly to this day don't know what really prevented me from carrying out what I would have been just an awful event, And something did. Something resonated. Some reasoning was still happening in my head, thankfully. And I remembered the next morning getting up and saying to myself, I'm going to get some help. I've got a problem. I need to go get some help. And I remembered calling up the flight surgeon who was the caregiver, a care provider for us. And his office was across the street from where I worked. And I remembered making that walk, and it was probably only 20 yards or so of a walk, but it was the longest walk I have ever made, because I knew what I was doing was I'm going to someone to admit that I have a problem, that it's no longer, it's my wife, it's my children, it's my environment. No, it's me. And a culmination of those events that really led to it. So it was a journey, and it didn't end there, unfortunately. It continued on multiple times from that point. But that was one of the first times, and that was the very difficult conversation to have. I'm not meant, or I've been told I'm not that emotional, and I remembered talking to the flight surgeon, who was a fellow captain at the time, and I remembered my eyes welling up as I tried to explain what it was that I was going through. And there was just so much emotion built up in me at that point, because it had been going on at that point for a couple of years, and it just, so much of that was emotion was coming out. It was very difficult, very difficult.
Well, I would say thank you for doing the work that you do now, because it is hard, it is a journey, and I know that it's not easy. I can only imagine what it's like. Secondly, I understand, because I've been situationally depressed because of pain and trauma and tragedies. But again, it's not until you admit to yourself that you need help that you actually get better and find a place where you can cope in a way that allows you to function as a human being and not harm anybody around you. As I was reading your bio that you sent over and learning more about you, one of the points that you wanted to make on the program, which I thought was quite profound, is to let those that are watching, and in particularly veterans, because that's your sweet spot, you understand it, you lived it, there's a reason why you are doing this and creating this foundation or organization, this nonprofit. It's not just something that veterans go through. Let's reiterate, depression is an illness, and it impacts so many people, and we have such a stigma around it that no one wants to say the truth that they're hurting. And really, we need to be able to let go of the stigma, and there's so many of us who need support and help, whether it's situational because of an immediate trauma or pain, or whether it's a chronic desire to feel better because we're in a state of depression. It is extremely critical for you to let others know that it is okay not to be okay. Right. That is the quote that you sent, that I just thought, wow.
Yep.
Because how many times are you given permission to not feel good? Most people tell you, get better, do something about that, go get medicated, go fix it, go work out, you'll feel good.
Absolutely.
But who actually takes the time to say, you know what, it's okay to stay in bed for a day or two. Just be with it.
Right.
So can you expand more on why that is such a critical message that you want to put out there into the world?
Yeah, for the military, as you said, there's a near and dear to me aspect to active duty military and veterans. And again, there's probably there's a little bit of uniqueness, I guess, in the element that makes up our military, our active duty military. And one of them is you press on. There was a discussion I remember having. I'm trying to remember now who exactly. I think it was Dr. Penantel, who I was having a discussion with, and we had talked. He was a veteran of Vietnam, and one of the things that he was making mention about is, there's people. The way the military is as an example, is if you're let's say have combat boots on and you're off on a forced march going somewhere. And you start to get a sore on your foot or something like that, most people would stop and take care of that injury. And what he and I had talked about was, in the military, it's quite different. The attitude, it's not stop, take the boot off, and take care of the injury. It's tighten the boot up and carry on and move forward and don't stop and keep pressing forward. Meet the objective. And there's that sense of urgency and of a dynamic in the military that we face every day. And one of the things that dawned on me was it's one of those things in the military. It's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to say, hey, I have a problem, and this problem is called mental illness or depression in my case, but it's okay. And that is first and foremost in our discussion that my wife and I would like to get out to folks, especially the active duty military, the active duty out there, is that it's okay. And that's the first step. As you very well said, it starts with yourself and your inner self. You've got to admit the fact that, hey, I have a problem. There's so much help out there. There's many entities. Lucius Seneca Wellness Group, sure, that's one, but there are so many others, and they're all very meaningful and good organizations. But they won't do anything unless the person himself admits, yes, I need help. It's okay not to be okay.
What's your hope and goal for your organization? Someone finds out about you, they're watching the show, and they say, wow, I want to talk to Todd, I want to talk to Todd's wife, I want to learn more because I'm admitting to myself I need help. What can your organization do for those that are seeking support?
Well, you mentioned about a goal and what my goal is. And on the subject of depression and mental illness, especially when it comes to the military, there are many statistics that one can quote. There's one that there's only two that I hold on to. One is from a Veterans Affairs review that was done a couple of years back now that makes mention to 22 active duty and veterans commit suicide every day. So that's nearly one an hour. The other, which goes back to what is my goal? My goal is to decrement that by one, if I can. One a day. If I can do more, that'd be great. And as I was driving up here today, that goal was first and foremost in my mind. My hope and intent is that by hearing what I have to say, by possibly reading the book that I've taken the time to write, that others will admit, hey, it's okay not to be okay, as we just talked about, and go get some help. And I'm telling you that it is the times that I have talked to groups of people about this subject, it is always amazing and hugely fulfilling to me to have someone come up to me either afterwards or in an email follow-up and say, after seeing you or hearing what you've been through, I'm going to go get help now. And that is one. That's one of that 22 a day, and that's frankly all I care about doing. And it's if they can get the help through the Lucius Seneca Wellness Group, which is again our mode of operandi is through the use of our publications that we're writing, the journal, the journey books. If people can pick one of those up and feel an association with that and go get some help, that's our mission is complete. So the goal isn't very complicated. It's not very elegant per se. It's really just getting that one person to admit at that time, say, hey, I need to go get some help, and to prevent one of those deaths that occur every day.
And how do you get your message out there? I know that the books are definitely a channel for that. Yes. What are your goals for the organization, you and your wife? Do you plan on speaking at more events? Do you plan on doing kind of an announcement about just education forums? I mean, what are some of the things you have in mind?
Our main goal is fairly simple. It is an outreach goal. It's to communicate the message. And one way we do that is through the writing that I've done in my journals and that I've transformed into the books that are out there right now. The other goal is to get that message out in the hands of the people that could use it. And one of those organizations is the Fleet and Family Support Centers that are out there right now today, located amongst all of our bases, active duty bases that we have. And it's a terrific mechanism, again, of being able to put those in the hands of those family support centers and get that message out. So that's one of my hopes, is that I'm able to take and freely distribute. And I think that's the key too, is that freely distribute the material to those Fleet and Family Support Centers, which we've only been able to touch a couple at this time, and there are hundreds of them. So I want to be able to get those in the hands of those folks there. Those Fleet and Family Support Centers serve a tremendous purpose and value to the active duty military that we have out there today and their families. And it would be one of the key locations to have a message like that, being able to have that there.
Right. Well, I'm hoping that we have some viewers who have some connections and contacts for you that can reach out to us and let us know of anyone that you can contact and make this possible for so many of our service men and women out there in the world.
I'm associated with other entities as well. As I said before, there's many out there that are willing and able to give some help to people. Certainly, you can find out more about the Lucius Seneca Wellness Group at our website. It's www.luciusseneca.com, wellness group, or WG.com. Again, it's a mouthful. I wish we could have trimmed it, made it shorter for the sake of people finding it. But certainly, all you have to do is Google that or do a search on Lucius Seneca Wellness Group, and it'll take you there. You can find out more about our journey and a broader message by going there as well.
And we'll also put links on our show as well. I do want to address something that we touched upon, which is family. And, our viewers might not be the ones suffering from depression, but they certainly are impacted by someone that they love going through this. What if a family member suspects that there's depression and they don't know how to confront their loved one, or they don't know how to bring it up? How did your wife or your family, this is so important, and I say this with all due respect. I think, and for me as well in my life, there were times when, number one, I was the one who was depressed, and a lot of people didn't know how to support me. And at the same time that I didn't want the support because I didn't want the attention, I didn't want to have people confirm that I was depressed. I also didn't want to burden anyone. I wanted to be able to do this on my own. There were moments of that. And then there are also times in my life, and I think I'm representing others who are watching here, where I've known and loved someone who was battling depression, but they hadn't admitted to themselves, or certainly not to me. And I didn't know how to reach out. I didn't know how to support. And it really caused a lot of friction between the relationship. So much so, and we talked this pre-show, that my best friend committed suicide about 4 years ago. And there were hints of depression. There was certainly situational depression, so I thought, because there were some traumas and tragedies that happened. But it had been something he had been fighting pretty much all his life. And I didn't know how to bring that up. So I would love to have feedback, advice. What do you do?
I don't know if I have the magic, but to me this is as close to the magic as you can get as to having the answer. And I summarize it pretty simply. And I would say relentless passion and support. It's got to be relentless on the part of those who know someone who is suffering, who's going through the illness of depression. I say that because, to me, that's what's proven out for me. And my wife's support, she never gave up. She had plenty of opportunity to walk out the door, to collect her things and say, "Hey, I'm good. I'm done with this. You've got a lot to deal with. You got your own problems." She was relentless in her passion to stay with me, to support me, and it was through that I saw through my own illness and was able to go get some help. The websites, the phone numbers, there's the 1-800 numbers. I mentioned this, I think, in one of my writings. They're there. I remember a conversation after I was able to use the word depression in a group setting one time, and I started to be okay with it. A close friend of mine sent me an email after finding out about my illness, And that email contained a string of support groups and websites. And I remember sitting back, and my wife was in our kitchen, and I remember looking at her, and I said, for some reason this email makes me feel bad. And it was because I knew those sites existed. I knew there were 800 numbers. I didn't want the help. That's the furthest thing that I wanted. I didn't want people to know that I was going through my depression and through my illness. Call it stigma, what have you, but it was something that was my burden, and it wasn't something that I was willing to share with anyone. But my wife and her passion and her relentless commitment to that, to saying, no, I'm sticking this out with you. We're going to get through this. It was the magic, if you will, for me. That was the thing that out there that helped the most. I don't know if that answered your question per se, but it can vary. It's going to vary from, I think, individuals for sure. But the relentless support that she provided, she didn't give up. At times when she could have, I made a comment one time to someone. I think I was doing an interview, something similar, and I remember the interviewee or interviewer said to me, well, you're a hero. And I immediately looked at her and I said, no, I'm not a hero, not by any stretch or form of the imagination. But I said, my wife, who was sitting next to me at the interview, I said, that's a hero. And she looked at me and of course gave me a little bit of a like, oh, okay, you're just being. And I said, no, think about it. A hero, definition of a hero is someone who saves a life. And I said, she saved my life. It was her relentless passion and support to me that got me through it. And if it wasn't for that, there were multiple times I think I would have actually acted on those suicidal thoughts that I had had. So for me, that was what helped. And I'm certain for others out there, that's a potential to help them as well.
And communication, talking about it,
Yes.
especially if it's uncomfortable.
Right.
And to know that doesn't make me feel good to say this truth, but I'm unhappy.
Right.
And I'm unhappy because you're unhappy. And the only way that this is going to be a happy unit is if you find some way to allow bliss back into your life. I can imagine that's hard to hear, because I'm sure as a partner, especially with your life partner, you want to bring happiness to their lives. And
Right.
when they're saying that they're not happy, I think that's one of the messages I got early when you found out she was not telling you, she was
Right.
telling you an untruth, as she
Right.
put it.
Yes. Yes.
So, if that's happening to a life partner at that level, what was it doing to your other relationships, your friendships and all of that? Were those definitely being impacted, or did you hide that part of you?
This is, from, again, my perspective, from the illness as I experienced it. I can only answer that question from that perspective. But I will tell you that it was an interesting story. I was sitting down one time. We have to periodically go through security reviews, and you fill out questionnaires, and then they come and they talk to you about what you filled out. And I remember the time where the person came down to talk to me about the forms that I filled out. And these forms are, they talk about, and I'm sure it's nothing unusual, but it's, okay, you name a list people that you are friends with and stuff, so they can go back and do some research. And I remember during the interview session that I'm sitting there going, my depression has isolated me to a point, I can't list anyone outside of the boundary which I worked in that I had friends with anymore. I had cut off all those relationships. I isolated myself, and it was through that conversation, through that silly questionnaire and interview, that I realized to myself that, hey, I've got this problem, and this problem is not only now affecting me, but it's affecting everyone I've known or touched, in some way. And I basically had no friends. I had no life outside of my depression. I'd leave work, and I was deep into my own depressive thoughts. And that was just one of the examples, or one occasion that it really brought up. But I certainly, in my own depression, I was isolated or isolating It was very much I wanted nothing to do with anyone outside, anyone, period, even my own family. So the fewer the better was the way my motto kind of went. So, yeah.
And I know this is going to be a loaded question, but how do you reclaim your life back once you realize what depression has done in terms of your social circle, your family circle? What did you, again, speaking from your perspective, of course the first step was to admit that you needed the help and that it was okay not to be okay, but what other things? I mean, how do you maintain a lifestyle, a healthy one, with bliss and love and joy, knowing that you're living with depression?
Yeah, I had to say, I go back to another example, I suppose, that I remember my wife telling me one time, after several arguments that we've had before, again, I was in my depression at the time, little did I know, and she made a comment to me about how she wanted the old Todd back. And I only say that because for the longest time, I kept thinking to myself, I want the old Todd back. I want to be the me who I was years ago, before the depression, before those events. That's who I wanted to be back again to. I think for me, and again, from my own circumstances, it was coming to the realization, the knowledge that that's not me anymore. I've changed. There is a change in me. I have to acknowledge that change and accept it and deal with it. And again, the way I've dealt with it is through therapies of various sorts, medication and talk therapy, through journaling. Again, we go back to what helps others, may be similar, may not be. But there's a lot of recourses out there to go and try to help. But for me, I don't know if I have the old life back, per se. I don't know if that's the way I would personally couch my experience right now. I'd have to say this is the new me now, and I've accepted my illness, and I have accepted the social stigmas that go with it, and it is who I am, and this is me going forward. So I guess I say it's really taking stock in yourself, and you try to pull yourself back together, understanding that things change, you change as a person, and realizing that and dealing with it going forward. So it's maybe not a direct way to answer it, but it's certainly, again, the way I feel about myself.
Your work in the world, your calling, your purpose, being able to put yourself out there and basically tell the world, this is me, the new me, the package of me that has been diagnosed with depression, that it's important for me and my wife and my family to put our story out there. What is your hope in doing so? Why do you put yourself and play this leadership role and say, I want to educate, I want to mentor? What is your hope for the world of mental illness by being a part of the education? I
would love to say that I want to eradicate the stigmas and eradicate mental illness. I would love to say I can do that, but I realize that I alone can't do that. I go back to the example that has stayed with me for a long time after I got done talking to a group of folks down at Pax River. And my wife and I were both speakers, and we had gotten done with one of the sessions, and we were walking out during a break. And one of the petty officers that was there very uncomfortably was waiting for that opportune time to jump in and to say something. You can just tell how someone gets a little bit uncomfortable. Is this the right time? Is this the right time? And I noticed him out of the corner of my eye, and I turned to him and I was like, hey, petty officer, what can I do for you? And he just said, sir, I want to thank you that my shipmate heard you talk a week earlier and is now getting help. And I can't think of anything more that I want, as I said over before, and I guess I'm just, it's a mantra for me, is I just want my message to help someone. And it's okay. This is who I am, and accept it. I've accepted it. And if that's all it takes, is for this message to get out and for another active duty person or veteran who can say, geez, I think that is me as well. I need to go get some help. He got help. I can go get help. That's it. That's what I want. That's it. It's really simple. And if it means communicating on various platforms and through various media, I'll do that. But it's all for that one feedback I'm looking for, which is, hey, I've got some help.
What's it feel like to be newly retired?
It's a transition. This is the new me, and I have to go like this because I've waited 26 years to grow a beard, and I don't know if I could successfully say I've grown one yet or not. It's in progress. So, but this is the transitional me. It's a physical transformation, I guess, if you will. I've waited 26 years. I've gone through active duty now for that amount of time, and I think it's in one way a symbolic, physical gesture on my part to say, I'm different now. I'm no longer the active duty person who served every day willingly and faithfully. But now I'm the retired, I'm the transitioned person now. I'm in a different sector of life. I'm moving on. And I have, much to my wife's chagrin, I guess, is I've ended up filling every void of time with something. So it's been a very active transition for me. I'm very thankful for the support I have gotten from both the medical doctors that I see on a regular basis to help me through my depression, as well as, again, for my family and friends. They've made that transition much easier to deal with. But I do have to say, I'll go into my closet and I still have the uniforms hanging on the right-hand side. And I will say that there isn't a time that I go in there and I look at that uniform in the corner of my eye and wish that I could put that uniform back on and serve with those that are out there today. So my thoughts are all the time with those that are serving every day.
Are there any final messages you'd like to speak directly to those that are in active duty now, or those that are veterans and that are coming to terms with their depression? Speaking from someone who's living it, who is basically saying you're not alone. What would you like to say to our military men and women?
I think the best thing I can say is, here I sit as a Navy captain of 26 years of active duty service. Again, served faithfully and loyally throughout that entire time. And you don't have to be a Navy captain. You can be anything in between to suffer from depression. Depression itself knows no boundaries relative to financial status, social status. As I said before, I have 5 wonderful children, a beautiful wife, a fantastic house, and everything anyone could really want. And I have depression. And it goes back to what we had talked about just a little bit ago. You need to admit it. You need to come forward with it and stop your suffering. It's okay not to be okay. That's the biggest thing I can say to someone out there right now, and especially in active duty service right now. It's okay.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And I also want to encourage those that are out there interested in finding you to check out the website. It's Lucius Seneca Wellness Group. And that's definitely available to anyone who's seeking support. Todd and his wife are, anxiously awaiting your contact and your call. Also, your books. Where can we find where your books are? Are they on the website as well?
There's links on the website as well, and certainly if anyone goes to, they could easily go to Amazon.com right now and do a search on my name, and they ought to find it fairly easily. But there is a link on the website as well to make it easy as well.
Great. And your 4th one, you're basically taking your time, but very soon, I'm sure that if they check the website, they'll be able to see the links to all 4. So good luck with that. I wish you so much happiness and on your journey. Very proud that you're taking this stance for mental illness and depression, and that it's totally okay where you are.
Well, I'd like to thank you, and I think the forum that you've created is fantastic, and you're giving people opportunity, which is really needed. So thank you for allowing me to speak and be here today with you.
It's my pleasure, my honor. Again, thanks for being here. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Again, please reach out if you need to contact Todd directly and can't find information on his website. Feel free to contact us here and we will certainly provide you with everything that you need to get the support and the love that you need to continue moving forward with your life. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time here on Tea with Molly.
Pretty much a good day for me would be people leaving their hands off of me. I'm always called names. Everywhere that I go, there's always someone calling me names, calling me gay. I've been choked, thrown up against the wall, punched. Nobody's ever tried to help me.
Our food, our fresh air, our forests, our playground, our water, our planet. Together, our hands can save it. Connect your hands with ours, and we can save our land, our water, our future. Join us at nature.org.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.